Gather around, people. Come around now. It's time for us to have the very best of football conversation as regards the World Cup. It's all about the game. Brought to you by AfriOne Mobile, the first ever made in Nigeria smartphones and tablet, and now Nigeria's fastest mobile wallet. My name is Babajide Guerrero, and yes, it's fine to say that I'm all alone on today's show running solo. This is because I told you yesterday that my man Biola Kazim is en route Russia, and as we speak is going to land very shortly, so it's not going to be able to make today's broadcast, but definitely tomorrow he will be joining us on the show live in Russia. Biola Kazim bringing us the very best of course, juicy news in that particular regard. It's the match day 2, especially for Group A, and of course Group B will be continuing tomorrow. Group H had their own round 1 games earlier today, where we saw Poland take on Senegal, and at the same time we also saw Colombia playing Japan in that particular group. That was the very first game in that group, and interestingly, it's finally that time to celebrate an African win. You know, people say I see light at the end of the tunnel. I like to ask that, how long is that tunnel and how long is that light? Well, for Africa, that tunnel came in, that light, I beg your pardon, came through that particular tunnel when Senegal finally picked up the very first win, very first African win at the World Cup. Remember that earlier in the World Cup, we saw Egypt lost Morocco as well, and Nigeria, and at the same time Tunisia. It was all on the Teranga Lions of Senegal to come with the goods, and eventually they did. In a game that they didn't really particularly dominate, we saw them, they were mostly second to Poland in most of these, in terms of possessions, in terms of aerial prowess in that particular game, in terms of penetration and ball retention from their midfielders. But we saw a great game yesterday, earlier today, I beg your pardon, when we saw Senegal take center stage against Poland. It was a very good game, I must say. So we witnessed Senegal taking the game to Poland. What a great game we saw yesterday, when Poland were just not good enough against the Teranga Lions of Senegal. We said it day before yesterday on the show when Biola and I were absolutely talking about how good Poland is, especially when Robert Lewandowski is in his mood. But it didn't really get into that full gear against the Teranga Lions. They coped quite well, Koulibaly especially at the back. But meanwhile, Gay was, of course, a very formidable force in the middle of the pack. Sadio Mane, of course, he was always going to be that man to lead the charge, but the goal came from the boot of Niang. In fact, that was a very only chance they had at the goal. That was the only shot on target. They had other 4 shots on target. I think this particular win would bode well for Senegal. It's the first African win. It's the first maximum 3 points an African team is getting at the World Cup, this particular World Cup. Then they also know the fact that they will be playing Japan and Colombia. And how did that game go? Well, not particularly too well for the Colombians, but we also mentioned that the Japanese are coming into that game with a lot of emotions. This is because a couple of hours to that particular match day, they got a news from Japan that Osaka had suffered an earthquake, and the coach came out to say most of the players are having family members who are affected, by this particular earthquake, and it was down to the Japanese players to dig deep. The psychological momentum was not particularly going in their favor, coming against Colombia side that they played in the World Cup in 2014, and that game ended 4-1, I think, with James Rodriguez firing on all cylinders. But it was deja vu not to be for Japan as they defeated Colombia 2-1, and we saw the first red card. We did see that Japanese came eventually with the goods against Colombians. We saw the very first red card in this year's tournament, gotten by Sanchez, the Colombian, in the 3rd minute already, and unfortunately he tried being the hero in that particular one, but it didn't go that well, as we saw Borussia Dortmund's Shinji Kagawa put in the penalty at the back of the net. And for the from then onward, it was all a balanced game, and then we saw an equalizer by Colombia, bringing on James Rodriguez, who had a calf injury in that particular game, in training, coming to that game to just maybe balance out and see if at all they can influence the game, but not to be, unfortunately. Japan scoring another goal towards the end of the second half of the game, meaning Japan would have maximum 3 points in this particular group, which puts them in good stead going into their further games against Poland and Senegal. Well, for Colombia, they get a chance of playing again when they square up against their next match, and they're looking forward to get another maximum points. But unfortunately for them, they really need to probably start dragging. Dragging at the point is what Egyptians has currently faced in the World Cup. They have been dragged out of the World Cup. Yes, unfortunately, on the night where we had the very first African victory. We also had the very first African team sent packing from the World Cup. Unfortunately, it's a cloud that is dark ahead and above Egypt at this time, as they're the first team to get knocked out at the Russia 2018 World Cup at the expense of Russia. Russia happened to be the first team to have advanced to the next round in the World Cup. And particularly, guys, I don't know if at all you see this coming, but when we saw the groups and we saw Egypt, we saw Saudi Arabia, we saw Russia, and we saw Uruguay, most teams, or more like most people, would have thought that it was going to be easy ride for Uruguay and, of course, maybe Egypt, given the fact that Mo Salah was one of the best players in the world at that time, if not the best player in the world at this time. But unfortunately, things are not going according to plan. Mo Salah eventually scored. Yes, he did. He scored a penalty in that particular game. But Russia, my, oh my, what a performance they put together. Yes, they went through the first goal with a courtesy, an own goal, but the next two goals was as a result of sheer will and determination. And now what these wins mean for Russia is that it puts them in that mode, getting ready for the second half of the second round of the tournament, knowing fully well that they've already won 2 games already, scoring 8 goals and conceding just 1. And yes, maybe 5 goals came from Saudi Arabia, but you look at it from the angle that a win in the World Cup is good. Is a good feel. Now, when you talk of 2 wins consecutively, and that right there gives source for a lot of joy. And the coach, Stanislav Shecherov, is particularly happy right now, and he's saying they are taking a game at a time. They will get to play the toughest game at the end of their group phase. They get a chance of probably fighting to see. Yeah, so Stanislav Shecherov, the coach of Russia, said they're taking a game one at a time. But I think the good thing for them is the fact that the toughest game for them is coming at the last, when they've gotten the best job done, which is qualification. Now they can get to rest some of their key players or probably go for topping the table, because once they top the table, they tend to avoid the likes of Spain and Portugal. I'm sure the whole of the Russian Federation will want to avoid either playing Portugal or Spain, who also will be playing a game today. Of course, interestingly, we also said that Russia has qualified, first team to qualify for the second round. Meanwhile, Egypt are the first team to get out of the tournament. And we also said the only thing that you can do at this point that will bring smiles to my face and to your face as well is to subscribe to the YouTube channel of AfriOne Mobile. And now, how do I do that? You just go to the YouTube and type AfriOne Mobile and you subscribe. You click on that particular button to subscribe and you stand a chance of winning amazing prizes, including smartphones and souvenirs and airtimes, and of course a chance of putting smiles on your face. So we're looking forward to having your thoughts. We already have a winner from last game out when we said someone should predict between the winner between the game between England and Tunisia, and we already also have a winner from that particular one, and there will be other games as well. To talk about today's games, that's the one that we really want to juice up at the moment. We'll be seeing the team Portugal take on Morocco, and that's a Group B fixture, and at the same time we'll see Spain and Iran. And how did these particular 2 teams fare? We all know the particular game between Iran and Morocco going down to that particular wire. It was scored by a goal scored by an own goal scored by Bozizi in the 94th minute. In fact, that's the second latest goal scored in the history of the World Cup. The latest goal scored ever is by Francesco Totti against Australia. But in this particular game, we saw the Iranian side showing a lot of gusto in terms of packing the bus, or probably having, I won't say packing the bus, I'll just say defensive structure. They had that structure, they had that coordination, they had that organization. And why wouldn't they have that kind of coordination? Because they have an amazing coach in Carlos Queiroz, who's having his 4th World Cup with his 3rd team. He's as experienced as you get. Former Manchester United assistant coach, former coach at Real Madrid, Benfica as well. Is gone through his business over the years at different clubs, putting his own landmark and watermark on his own ideas. And one of such ideas is the fact that he likes to defend. A typical Carlos Queiroz team is what we saw against Morocco. Very defensive minded, and they can hurt you going forward. And they did hurt Morocco at some point when they had the chance. But against Spain, it's going to be a very different kettle of fish already, because Spain are smarting. They were in that particular controlling position against Portugal. But unfortunately, David De Gea mistake saw them, crawling back, saw Portugal crawling back to take a maximum point in that particular game. And Spain, sticking with Spain, they also had a little bit of issue during the course of the tournament. Julian Lopetegui, the coach who saw them through the qualifiers, was sacked a few days, and a lot of people were asking, will this be a particular issue for the Spanish team playing Portugal, a huge rival in that particular game? Will this particularly mean a huge deal for them? But unfortunately, we didn't see any issue in that particular. It was particularly very, very easy in terms of goals. It was 6 goals, that scoring game we've had so far in this tournament. So, and you're looking at this particular game and you have a feeling that it's going to be Spain wanting to go all out against Iran in terms of goals, in terms of dominance, and in terms of possession. Iran would always want to come up with that defensive determinism to just be very stoic in defending a typical Carlos Queiroz side. But unfortunately, I see Spain eventually picking maximum points in this one. Queiroz said, he said it himself already, he said we don't have super players like Spain, but we have players that can do super things. And I'm sure one of the players he can actually do super things will be Yakabash. Yakabash plays for AZ Alkmaar, and AZ Alkmaar, a team in the Dutch league. He scored 23 goals, highest goal scorer in that particular team for AZ Alkmaar. It's going to be huge for Iran in this particular match. But for Spain, they're started everywhere with stars. You look at their back line and their front line and the middle. Yeah, he's got everything going for him now, Fernando Hierro. I do not think they'll particularly be in top gear to win this one, but I think they'll just do enough to win this particular game, knowing fully well that they need a maximum point to get back to being a force to reckon with in this particular group, because it's the World Cup, and Spain know too well how much it means to win every game, game by game, especially a World Cup that I've seen Argentina lose lose some grounds in the Group D, drawing against Iceland, as well as Portugal and Spain involved in draw. Brazil as well involved in the draw against Switzerland. The big boys, the big teams, the favorites in quotes, are a little bit struggling to get their engine started. Maybe not struggling, but maybe they're taking their time to get their engine started. And speaking about engine getting started, my oh my, was his engine fired up. Cristiano Ronaldo, 51 career hat-tricks. That was the 50 hat-trick in the history of the World Cup, and that's the 6th hat-trick in the Selecao jersey for Portugal, and that right there for me is absolute greatness against Spain. It's been a while we've seen such a dominant one team or one man battering ram go against the team, and not just any other team, Spain. And that was the first game in the World Cup for this particular Portuguese side. I think in that particular game they showed how very, very determined they will be, especially with Ronaldo fired up in the thick of things, getting service from the likes of Fernando Silva in the middle of the pack, Bernardo Silva, beg your pardon, and at the same time also getting possible support from the backline. And I think it was just what we saw from Ronaldo. That's why Ronaldo is Ronaldo. That's why he's where he is, one of the fastest players in the world, and of course one of the best players, if not the best player in the world. So you have a feeling that against Morocco, it's going to be more like an encore for Portugal, especially with Ronaldo firing on all cylinders. In the last 2 World Cups that he has been to, he scored just 3 goals, and so for him to score and equal that particular goal fit in just 1 game tells you that it takes this particular World Cup serious. They are not particularly the favorite to go all the way to lift the title, but with the performance we saw against Spain, I think they've taken a lot of critics under their belt, and they've taken a lot of praises for that particular performance. I think the team showed a lot of grit, especially at the back line with Pepe and of course Jose Fonte. Jose Fonte may not particularly start in this game because he may probably be benched as Bruno Alves may be coming back into the team, and we'll see what the back line would look like. For Morocco, it's time for them to yes again hoist the African flag high up there and see the possibility of getting back to winning ways. And it won't be the first time, if at all. It won't be a surprise, a huge surprise if Morocco should beat Portugal, because Morocco eventually had actually beaten Portugal in 1984 World Cup, and because that was the only defeat that Portugal has suffered from an African side all World Cup long, in all fairness. And now we're looking forward at the chance of if at all Morocco can continue this feat, if at all they can do well against Portugal. That would mean a lot of good tidings for Hervé Renard. In the game against Iran, it was quite unfortunate that they conceded. Now I worry for them because I'm trying to see how well they could probably put themselves together from that particularly psychologically unfortunate situation where they found themselves in 94th minute. If you consider a goal in football, anything from the 70th minute, you still have a little bit of time to recover. But when you start considering from 84, 85, 87, 89, it's kind of worrying, and that right there is an issue for the Moroccan team. They've got some of the good players in Europe at this time. Ziyech from Ajax. They've got Amrabat as well doing well, but we're looking at the chances of, if at all, they can have what it takes to play this particular Ronaldo side, this Portuguese side led by Cristiano Ronaldo, and it's been absolutely outstanding. Well, that's Group A and Group B. And Group A is done. We know for a fact that Russia will be in the next round. Still sticking to Group A at this time, Uruguay will be playing Saudi Arabia. But before I go into that, I can also tell you for free that the game in focus will be the game between Portugal and Morocco, and I never leave you behind, you know me for a fact. All you need to do is just go to the AFI1 mobile YouTube channel. Go there and subscribe to the YouTube channel and stand a chance of winning amazing prizes, including AFI1 mobile phones, including souvenirs, cash prizes, and amazing prizes await you if you do. All you need to do is just predict the scoreline between Portugal and Morocco. Predict to win mobile phones, cash rewards, and more. Portugal and Morocco is a game in focus. And lastly, as the Group A will be in Spectrum at this time, we're looking at the game between Uruguay and Saudi Arabia. And if I told there's anything to say about Saudi Arabia, is that they have a very, very plucky team. T&Cs has come into that team to show us that he can do and replicate what he's done with Chile for Saudi Arabia. But interestingly, he has not really particularly covered himself in glory, like they used to say, in that particular game against Russia. 5-0. They controlled the ball for the better part of the first half. We saw them in the faces of the Russians. They were fighting for every possession, and it was quite good eventually, but only for a certain period, because at some point they broke down and they allowed 2 goals in the 90 minutes was what absolutely plummeted them down to where they are right now. They are at the bottom of the table, and I do not think they will be looking for a miracle against this Uruguayan side. Oscar Tabarez is a particular manager that knows how to grind that result, and we saw him, grind a result out against Egypt. Albeit, unfortunately, it was a late-minute header by Jimenez. And Luis Suarez has come under a little bit of unfortunate criticism for not doing enough to get goals in that particular game. He missed some sitters. According to by his standards, he should be putting those balls at the back of the net. But not particularly to say that he doesn't find his feet. I mean, this is Luis Suarez. Luis Suarez is all-time highest goal scorer for Uruguay, and at the same time, he has Edinson Cavani in for company in the front. And I'm looking forward to seeing them it's going to be a whitewash, in all fairness. I do not see Saudi Arabia winning this particular one. I also do not see Uruguay wanting to let loose a chance of qualifying with Russia to the second round of this particular World Cup, and knowing fully well that they also have one more game to go against Russia to see just who will get to be number one in that particular team, in that particular group. Everybody's avoiding playing a super second round fixture, because whoever comes out tops will play second in the Portugal, Spain, and Morocco and Iran group. That's why it's absolutely crucial to get all maximum points. And I know for a fact that Uruguay want to do that against Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia were particularly plucky in their defense in the game against Russia. When you concede 5 goals against Russia, a Russian team that, in all fairness, can't really compare to Uruguay player for player, in terms of pedigree, and the Russian team that had a lot of problems going into the World Cup. They hadn't won a game since October 2017, and Russia trashed Saudi Arabia 5-0, and that just tells you there's a lot to be worried about as Uruguay will file out against Saudi Arabia today. So all you need to do to be in the train for AFI1 Mobile is to go to the YouTube channel and do well to subscribe to the YouTube channel. So we've gone in for 3 amazing games today. We're looking at a Group A fixture between Uruguay and Saudi Arabia. We're looking at a Group B fixture between Iran and Spain, and Portugal will square up against Morocco in that particular group. Of course, Group C, Group D, E, F, G, H will be on the way very, very shortly. My name is Babajide Guerrero, and finally, remember, it's all about the game, brought to you by AFI1 Mobile. AFI1 Mobile are the first ever made in Nigeria smartphones and tablets, and now Nigeria's fastest mobile wallet. Till I come your way again tomorrow with fixtures from Group C and D. I look forward to seeing you, and remember, God bless Nigeria.